This is The Evil Conservative on Thursday, November 12th, 2009. Just wanted to discuss yesterday's article in Salon.com by famous second wave feminist Camille Paglia. Camille Paglia is one of my favorite liberal writers. She writes every second Wednesday of the month. Drudge typically links it, and that's typically how I get her stuff because I would never admit to an RSS feed to anything on that piece of crap Salon.com site. But she actually wrote some interesting stuff yesterday that I wanted to discuss, and her title of her article is Pelosi's Victory for Women. And I think she gets a little rah-rah with the chicks too much. She's actually a very famous liberal Democrat defender of Sarah Palin's. She thinks that Sarah Palin absolutely housed Joe Biden in the debate. She was always currently a fan of Palin, even at some of her lowest moments, like when she resigned. She's defended her vehemently on the Charlie Gibson and Katie Couric interviews. So here again, she's taking an opportunity to give a woman praise, I guess somewhat deserved. She writes, in shoving her controversy-plagued healthcare reform bill to victory by a paper-thin margin, Nancy Pelosi conclusively demonstrated that a woman can be just as gritty, ruthless, and arm-twisting in pursuing her agenda as anyone in the long line of fabled male speakers before her. Whether or not her bill survives in the Senate is immaterial. Pelosi's hard-won trench warfare win sets a new standard for U.S. women politicians and is certainly well above anything the posturing but ineffectual Hillary Clinton has ever achieved. So a nice little shot at Hillary Clinton for us conservatives to revel in. She goes on to talk about how horrendous the health care bill is. It's sort of contradictory, if not hypocritical, to be praising somebody who just tried to pass a completely garbage bill. She goes on to talk about how everybody's going to be exposed to the labyrinthine mass of incompetent, unaccountable, petty dictators. There's nothing being done about expanding the number of healthcare providers for the massive number of consumers that will now consume healthcare that were previously uninsured. She calls out the completely fake number of the plight of the uninsured, that it's much closer to, I think reports are 25 to 30 million. People typically say 46 million Americans. That's not accurate. It's 46 million people because about 14 to 15 million are illegal aliens. But she says something here that I disagree with, and it's something that a lot of people, even on the right, say that I think people need to think about more before they run their mouths. She says, no healthcare bill is worth the paper it's printed on when the authors ostentatiously exempt themselves from its rules. The solipsistic members of Congress want us peons to be ground up in the communal machine while they themselves gamble on in the flowering meadow of their own lavish federal health plan. Hypocrites. I disagree with that. I think that there's a lot of things that politicians do that don't affect themselves. Any bills that they earmark for certain areas of the country, people don't designate certain national reserves. The Social Security, everybody goes on to Social Security when they're 65. Everybody goes on to Medicare when they're 65. But these politicians, even when they retire, are not the primary users of Social Security benefits for retirement money, and they're not the primary users of Medicare for most of their health needs, as far as I know. That's something very private that we're all not going to be able to find out. But most people choose to have a lot of them have private investments, whether you're rich, whether you're a politician. So for her to kind of just say like, oh, if these members of Congress are going to vote for a certain health plan, they've got to go on it too. That's just ridiculous. I mean, this public option plan is going to cost enough, and now to put it out there that it should be as good as what the Senate and Congress gets would just be an exorbitant cost. So that's something that we really can't demand that our politicians do, is to put themselves on the healthcare plan if they're gonna vote for all these other things like S-chips, for example, is the health plan that's been expanded. It was a famous pet project of Senator Ted Kennedy. The S-chips program lets children up until the age of 17 or 18, I believe, get onto some sort of federal health plan. It's actually a state health plan that utilizes federal and state dollars to insure younger kids. And this is where socialism is actually not a bad word for me. I don't mind if we have a cradle and grave society, as long as it's not cradle to grave. Cradle to grave is what always worries me, and that's what ends up costing so much money. If we take care of people at the very end of life And by end of life, I mean age 75 and later, age 65 and later, age 75 and later. And if we take care of people when they're children, and by children, I mean children, not 26, 28-year-olds that can now get on New Jersey and New York health plans. Dependent ages for those two states are 29 for New York. Yes, you're considered a child dependent up to age 29 in New York State, and you're considered a child dependent up until age 31 in New Jersey. I'm talking about actual children up until 17 or 18 years old. If we have government programs such as healthcare, we obviously have schools, public schools for people up until the age of 18. I'm not against that. I think those are things that the government can fund. I think the private sector typically does a better job in these areas, but I'm not against it if we have public options for people that are really young and or really old, needing end of life care, which can be very expensive for private insurers and medical providers. But to demand that politicians go on to the healthcare plan that they vote for is complete nonsense. They don't put their children on the S-CHIPS plan. They don't utilize a number of laws and legislation that they promote and sign into law. A lot of that doesn't affect them. So to say that what they're going to do should affect them as well, I think is a pretty weak argument. She discussed the Virginia, New Jersey elections, and given that Camille Paglia is such a committed Democrat, despite being a fan of Palin and calling out the Democrats on this new healthcare bill, I think that someone like Camille Paglia is sort of who conservatives need to aim their agenda at, like any sort of campaigns that we have, commercials. We really need to look at the Camille Paglias of the world. She's an older voter, a very, very old voter. I don't understand why Salon actually has the cartoon picture of her that they do. It looks exactly like one of the scary caricatures in the Gorillaz Clint Eastwood song video. But anyway, I think that we really need to target, how I talked about Mad Libs with the David Cameron speech in Manchester early last month. I think that we need to find Camille Paglias and independent voters that are open-minded like her, and really target our pitch to them for 2010, because she basically said that the victories for Republicans in Virginia and New Jersey were dismissed as local aberrations by the liberal media or inflated as referendums on President Obama by the conservative media. I agree with her, neither is true. But she said voters are clearly voting against the deranged excess spending of government at both state and federal levels. So it was as much a protest against Congress as the White House. And I think that's a powerful message that Republicans need to take heed of. Then she spends 5 or 6 paragraphs, talking about, I don't know, British atheists or, Brazilian transsexuals, whatever normally is written in Salon.com. But then she gets back to something else that she says is a national scandal and the mainstream media has shamefully neglected, and I could not agree more, and that's the cost of tuition, especially at some of the better colleges and universities around the country. She called it legalized piracy. And she talks about when she discovered her bill from her first semester in school, which was in the fall of 1964. I think that's a misprint. I believe Camille Paglia went to school in the year 1694. But she went to Harper College and State University of New York at Binghamton. Her tuition was $200, room, board, a bunch of other things. It came out to a total of $413.50. So when we want to talk about the cost of just succeeding in America, we can't just be talking about the healthcare debate. We need to be talking about things like college and things that have sort of become a fixed cost, if you will, for our younger people growing up. And I'll end it on that. Again, she goes on again in the article to talk about more, I think, Bolivian transsexuals and other atheists and things that are typical for Salon.com. But that's the message for today. Thanks for listening.